Right. This is from Andy Brown's alleged independent harassment investigation. It's his further questions to Paul Browning after receiving the transcript I supplied of our conversation about the dodgy email from John O'Shea. And I've written there, supplied by Andy Brown on the 2nd of July 2014, which is probably the date I received it. Again, headed in the in strictest confidence, which of course I don't give a shit about anymore, because you forced me out of my job for the second time. Right, before you answer any questions, please take careful note of the following. It is important that you are as open and honest as possible, and that these questions and answers are not discussed with colleagues or friends, as this could prejudice my investigation. I'd just like to interject there and say, if anyone's read the ACAS handbook on bullying and harassment, it actually does tell you to speak to others to see if other people have been suffering the same kind of problems from the same people or whatever. But anyway, back to this. Royal Mail clearly doesn't do that because they want it kept quiet and swept under the carpet. Right, back to this. To thoroughly investigate the complaint, however, information from your answers may be put to others as part of my investigation, and information from the answers might be disclosed to others if Royal Mail need to rely on it to protect the interests of employees or the business, regardless, let me say, of whether or not it's legal. And it's all right, you have to remain confidential and not discuss it, but Royal Mail can take it and use it anywhere they want and discuss it with whoever they want. Anyway, back to this. It is also important for you to note that when I have gathered evidence in the case sufficient to come to a conclusion, I will provide copies of this evidence to the complainant and respondent. This will include your written answers to my questions. If you have any concerns regarding confidentiality, please do not hesitate to contact me. Another interjection here. I just want to point out that when I supplied to Andy Brown the transcript of that discussion with Paul Browning, I headed it without prejudice, meaning that it shouldn't be used in a way that prejudices me. And in other words, in legal terms, it means it's confidential. So why he stuck this in front of Paul Browning and let him choose his words and whatever, instead of strictly saying, right, this guy lied, right? You tell me, that's not cover-up? Anyway, back to this. If this were a face-to-face interview, I would remind you that you may have a colleague or a trade union representative present with you, should you wish. Therefore, I would state that you may wish to discuss this matter with a colleague who is an employee of Royal Mail Group or a representative of a recognised union. But it is important that the answers you give are your own. The colleague or representative should not be someone who is involved in this investigation. If you are in any doubts regarding this, please contact me before revealing anything regarding this email or so this was an email, okay, or the questions to them. Should you decide to consult another person, and the decision whether to do this or not is yours, it is vital that you impress upon them the confidential nature of the situation and inform me of whom this is. Please write your answers to the following questions in the space provided after each one. Save the document and return it by email. Thank you. And then below that, questions for Paul R. Browning. Question 1. Please read the transcript supplied by James Fisk. Could you please comment on this in a general sense? In a general sense? Questions related to specific parts will be detailed below. My comment, why? Why? You've got the evidence, okay? I've given you the evidence that this man lied. So why is he even getting a chance to even speak about it? And to weasel out of it? Anyway, the answer is, I do recall parts of this conversation, but there are also parts of this transcript which I cannot recall at all. It seems to me the conversation was recorded without my knowledge, and I was led somewhat, as Mr. Fisk knew he was recording the conversation. To which I put at the bottom, you were not led. You took me in the office and led the conversation. I was recording the whole morning, as I had since, and I'm not going to say when it was since, because I'll keep that to myself. Question 2. Regarding the conversation between you and Mr. Fisk, as noted on page 8 of the transcript, that starts with you saying, quote, so, reading between the lines, ... and ends with you saying, who works for recruitment, end quotes. I would welcome your comments on this. Answer is, I cannot recall whether it was James or somebody else previously had asked me about transfers back within a certain period of time. Well, it was me that asked him. Also, he says, I cannot recall the email, but it seems like somebody asked this question to HR. That's all I can add to this question. Right, so at the bottom I've written, it was my question to you and my statement of belief about 6 months to change mind. Question 3. In our original interview, you could not recall informing Mr. Fisk that the email from Mr. O'Shea had, quote, spaces, end quote, in it for you to draw your own conclusions from. In light of the transcription, how would you comment now? Answer. I cannot recall a lot of this conversation as it was over 8 months ago, but even if I had said this, ... lots of dots, spaces, so something's missing from there. It just goes on to say spaces means spaces and different people will draw different conclusions from the same emails. To which I've commented, in the copy supplied, there are no spaces in the copy supplied by John O'Shea. Why did you delete the evidence? So which one of these two is telling the truth? Because I've seen the email supplied by John O'Shea and the spaces are not there. But if this conversation from Paul Browning is true, and the spaces had originally been in there for him to draw his own conclusions, that section of the document is missing. And later on, I'm going to discuss what Royal Mail emails look like when they put double dotted lines in there, which would presumably be what this email with the spaces is. In other words, you cut out what's above and below, or what's in between the dotted lines. Now, there's something very, very wrong with this. Back to this. Question 4. In our original interview, you could not recall informing Mr. Fisk that if you showed him the email in question, you would be shown your P45. In light of the transcription, how would you comment now? Again, this is the answer. Again, I cannot recall saying this, but if I did know that people have asked me to see... Again, I cannot recall saying this, but if I did, I know that people have asked to see emails in the past over years, and I know I have commented that it would cost me my job to show emails that are not intended for them. Bear in mind, as this is being done by email, Paul Browning has plenty of time to think about what he's going to say. Anyway, question 5. Were you aware... Right. So far, I've shown that everything I said about him was true, right? And that he's an absolute liar. And yet, Despite that, Andy Brown turns the investigation against me because it was recorded. And the only reason it's recorded is because Royal Mail refuses to allow me to use a recording device, which I require because I need to be able to remember the details of what's going on, and also because I know that this company is setting me up at this time and trying to force me out of my job. That's why they don't allow you to record it. Right, so where were we? Now the investigation is turning against me at question 5, right? Were you aware that the conversation was being recorded? And my comment is, it's not relevant. Not relevant. His answer is, not in the slightest. Especially unhappy after the comments on page 4 of the transcript related to the recorded attendance meeting with Andrew Chitty, where the conversation was being recorded. Right, question 6. Has Mr. Fisk made you aware previously that he would record such conversations? Now, my comment, you're targeting me. Answer, no. And my comment, yes, you were aware because it was discussed in the stage 2 grievance meeting, which was recorded by accident. Question 7. How often would Mr. Fisk speak to you about his transfer back to Norwich Mail Centre or his issues? My comment next to that is disabilities. Answer. In general, it would have been with me or Andrew Chitty on a daily basis for around 10 to 20 minutes on most days. I can recall saying things to him just to get him to leave the room, as I had conference calls or meetings to attend. Right, if we're discussing my disability issues, why are you trying to get me to leave the room? You should be doing something about it, making reasonable adjustments. Anyway, my comment written on here is, you and Andrew Chitty weren't there every day. Question 8. Are there any further comments you wish to make in respect of this matter? And the answer, very unhappy that the conversation has been recorded without my knowledge. Well, what do you think I feel about the way this company treated me? Huh? I feel that Mr. Fisk knew he was recording the interview with the thought that he could use this either against me or anybody else. Have I got cause to proceed this under harassment? My comment, you don't know what my thoughts were. This is being used, this investigation is being used against me despite the words, quote, oh, right, this transcript was being used against me despite the words, quote, without prejudice, end quote. Second person to ask to get me punished. John O'Shea was first. Okay, the date on that was the 2nd of July, 2014. Name Paul R. Browning. It says signature Paul Browning, but obviously it's printed here. Does anything seem wrong in the way this is being conducted? Or is it just me? You seem to forget the objective of the investigation was to investigate my complaints against John O'Shea and Tony Salmon about me being bullied and harassed. But that never really happened, did it? Just a superficial investigation in which, same as Tony Salmon at Ipswich, you find no evidence, right? Despite the fact that the evidence is there. But what you're really doing is targeting me and saying it's made in bad faith so that you can set me up and fire me, right? And really, Andy Brown, perhaps you should have just asked me if I had recorded stuff. I already told you that I had the information. End of.